Hello there loyal subscribers and welcome to the second installment of my latest build series. As with the previous video, this is a legendary difficulty build which can only use the skills with which it has naturally raised at the start of the game. If you have any questions about this then feel free to leave them in the comments. In addition, if you're new around here then make sure to subscribe so you can keep getting new builds to play, and if you're already subscribed, hit the bell icon next to the subscribe button so that you get to be amongst the first to watch my videos when they're released. The Berserker grew up in Skyrim, born and raised on a farm to caring but harsh parents. He was told to always do as he was told, but a naturally rebellious spark dwelt within him, and every order he was given by his parents was one he would desire to ignore. Whilst he was still living with them though, he knew he had to do as he was told, and made sure to behave as best as he could. Constantly having to fight against his nature led to him cultivating a deep anger though, one that would suddenly rear its ugly head whenever he was pushed too far. This conflicting nature he experienced at home meant that he left as early as he could, initially just working on other farms, but eventually leading to him becoming a sword for hire, as he desired more independence and freedom from the rules of others. After a couple of years spent fighting for gold, he finds himself a wife who loves him unconditionally, and who is able to calm his raging soul. He settles down with her, and the pair start running a farm of their own, living a hard but happy life, which leads to his wife becoming pregnant. As this has been taking place, so too have the events that will lead to the start of a civil war in Skyrim. Initially, the White Gold Concordant was simply ignored by the Berserker and his wife. They had both worshipped Talos since the day they were born, and no piece of paper was going to change that. But after the Markarth incident, the Empire put their foot down on Talos worship. When the Imperial soldiers came to their farm, the Nord couple were having none of it. They didn't care what the Emperor had decided to do. They weren't going to forsake their beliefs. The couple have a heated argument with the soldiers, which leads to the leader of the group drawing his sword and threatening the Berserker. The dormant rage which dwelled within the man burst free, causing him to land a stunning blow to the Imperial's head with his fist, knocking the man down and leaving him laying in the dirt. The other soldiers draw their weapons, but the Berserker moves with the speed of a demon, grabbing an axe and a mallet from a pile of tools nearby, and charging towards the armoured men. Before the closest had the chance to raise his blade, the burly Nord buried his axe into the man's chest, cracking his ribs and puncturing his lungs. The other soldiers ran towards him with their blades held high, but the Berserker wove his way through them, felling them with a flurry of powerful strikes until he was finishing off the last soldier by repeatedly smashing the mallet into his skull. A scream behind him caused him to turn and bear witness to the sight of the leader of the soldiers resting his sword against the neck of the Berserker's wife. The Imperial orders him to drop his weapons, but this only serves to anger the Nord further. Hoping to outmatch the soldier, he throws the axe at the man, hearing a satisfying crunch as the blade splits his head in two. At the same moment as the axe left the Nord's hand, the soldier had pushed his blade into his hostage, cutting through her flesh and ensuring she would suffer the same fate as him. The Berserker runs over to his wife, cradling her in his arms and weeping as he is forced to watch helplessly as her mouth fills with blood and the last moments of her life fade away. Through tear-filled eyes, he makes out the sight of additional soldiers approaching from the distance. He flees the scene with haste, travelling for a week straight to get out of Skyrim and lose the authority in the wooded areas of the border. Fearing sleep, he tries to light himself a campfire, but struggles to get a spark for some time. After a handful of failed attempts, a female elf approaches and offers him help. Although initially wary, he lets her do so, and even allows her to take a seat with him. Over the course of a night, he will allow several others to share his campfire, before they all end up at the border of Skyrim. When the ambush is triggered, he will choose to let himself be taken prisoner, the consequences of resisting still too fresh in his mind. The skills available to this build are two-handed, one-handed, block, light armour, smithing and speech. At first I thought that having to use both two-handed and one-handed would be a large disadvantage to this build, but I found that both were able to work well together. One-handed works better for when you need to focus on getting damage in quickly, and don't need to worry about your own defence, due to the faster swing speed and the high DPS of dual wielding, we can take down weak enemies with our axes before they get in too many attacks of their own. Against tougher enemies with lots of staying power, these won't be of as much use though, as the enemy could just go blow for blow with us and come out on top. Instead, by switching to our Warhammer, we can land hits with a high chance to stagger, and also block with the weapon to improve our defensive capabilities. The block skill tree also has the quick reflexes perk at block 30, meaning that quite early on we have a way to avoid power attacks with ease. Considering how often you will die on legendary from a power attack when playing a pure melee build, this perk is going to help ensure we don't need to fear getting stuck into the fight. To help with our survivability, we will want to invest in the light armour skill, to ensure our damage reduction is as high as it can possibly be. Once you've sunk a few perks into this tree, you will find that you can go toe to toe with your opponents far more often. Smithing is also going to help improve our armour rating, as well as letting us craft our armour nice and early on. The Advanced Armours perk will let us craft both scaled and Nordic items, as well as improving them to a greater extent, meaning it will cover all of our equipment. I also invested a perk into Dwarven smithing for a couple of reasons. First and foremost is to help level smithing faster. Any of you who watch Major Slack will know that smithing Dwarven bows is a great way to level rapidly early on, thanks to the ease of getting the crafting materials. In addition, it will also let us craft Dwarven weapons and armour for our follower, and improve them to ensure that our buddy can tank several enemies at once, something they will likely have to do a fair bit. The final skill of the build is speech. And yes, this does mean that we actually get to buy and sell stuff. With a huge number of Dwarven bows constantly clogging up our inventory, we'll be able to sell them all so we can afford as much skill training as we want. This is one of only 2 builds that has speech as a starting skill, so make sure you're maximising your gold revenue by taking the first rank of Haggling right at the start of the game. Keep checking on merchants' wares to see if there are any particularly good enchanted items for you or your follower, as without enchanting you will be relying mostly on loot drops for if you want some added bonuses to your character. At the bare minimum, you'll be wanting to get yourself a ring and necklace with suitable enchantments to fit the build. When levelling with this build, I put around 80% of my levels into health and 20% into stamina. As a pure close combat build, we need a ton of health to ensure we can stay in the fight, but we don't want to completely ignore stamina, as we will need to be as mobile as possible, sprinting into and out of the fight. The standing stone I went with for this build was the Lord Stone. This will increase our armour by 50 points and our magic resistance by 25%, perfect for a build that will want to have a good piece of the action. Don't forget to use both the Warrior and Thief stones when power levelling, to maximise the rate at which you can create the build. For powers, the only one I used was Battle Cry, the racial ability of the build. This causes all enemies in the immediate vicinity to flee from you, and is the ideal way to deal with groups of bandits, as the last thing you want is to be outnumbered. In addition, shouts will factor in well with the build, but the ideal one may well be Elemental Fury, as you likely won't be using enchanted weapons, so an extra speed boost to your attacks will go a long way to improving your offensive powers. The weapons for this build are a Nordic Warhammer and a pair of Nordic War Axes. I spoke about the ways in which these 2 sets of weapons function back in the skills section, so all to worry about here is making sure they're improved to the highest quality. The armour you will wear is a full set of scaled armour, crafted through the Advanced Armours perk. Having this as a full set of matching light armour will help us out as we can get the relevant perks in the light armour skill tree to improve our armour rating as soon as they are available, helping us to eventually get close to the armour cap. In addition to this, you'll want to keep your eyes open for an enchanted ring and necklace, as I mentioned in the skills section. There are 2 recommended factions for this build, the Stormcloaks and the Companions. As a son of Skyrim, the Berserker will want to sign up with Ulfric, and restore his homeland's independence from both the Thalmor and the Empire. Joining the Companions will go some way to helping the Nord use his violent nature for a somewhat good purpose. Through becoming a companion, he will learn both the good and bad of his beast-like nature, and may learn how to control it. I will add that the starting missions for both these factions can be fairly tricky on Legendary, so make sure you're prepared for one hell of a tough quest when signing up with either of them. The first proper mission with the Companions is of a particular challenge, as you have to rely on Farkas instead of your own follower, and any of you who have seen my level 1 run know just how useless he is. Ideally you would want to travel with a member of the companions, but this will take quite a long time, so you'll need someone else to travel with before then. I journeyed around with Benor, as he was easy to get hold of and fitted the build nicely. All you need to do is head to Morthal and beat him in a fistfight, and then he'll stick with you through thick and thin. Don't forget to equip him for combat before taking him dungeon diving though, as his standard equipment is all incredibly weak. This build will be quite challenging to a lot of players, especially if sticking to the challenge run rules of only using the starting skills and playing on legendary. You don't have a ranged form of attack, and have to get right in the face of your targets before you're able to deal any damage to them, so make sure you're not hitting over your weight. Having a follower to tank for you will help no end with keeping you alive, by splitting up enemies, but even in 1v1s, you should never underestimate your opponent. For the best results in every fight, make sure to consume a strong helping of vegetable soup, so that you can do infinite power attacks, letting you not only increase your damage, but also allowing you to stagger lock through bashing with your Warhammer. For roleplaying, focus on helping out your factions to the best of your extent, and try to use the Berserker's violent nature for good wherever possible, to atone for what has taken place. As always, thanks to all of you who have watched this video through to the end. I truly do appreciate it. If you enjoyed the video, then let me know by giving it a like. If you have any questions, ask them in the comments. And if you want to know more about the channel, my life, or future videos, then follow me on Snapchat, Twitter and Facebook. Links are in the description.